Star Wars, Young Jedi Knights, Jedi Under Siege, Chapter 5. From the Shadow Academy's crowded hangar bay, Zeke watched the final preparations for the attack. The frenzy of bustling troops mixed with their foreboding anger and lust for destruction and galvanized him. He felt as if the lines of force around him had been set on fire. The hub of activity was an immense, hovering battle platform that dominated the hangar bay. Constructed specifically for this most important assault on the Rebel Alliance, the movable tactical platform bristled with weaponry. Stormtroopers crawled over its armored surface, preparing to launch. Guided by the Animus Night Sister Kamithi Kai, the platform would be the staging point for the ground combat. Jedi versus Jedi. At the battle platform's helm, she stood, eager for vengeance. Her long black cape slithered around her with a hissing sound like snakes coming up to strike. Spines taken from the carapace of a murderous giant insect protruded from her shoulders. Her black hair curled around her head like ebony wires, writhing and crackling with dark powers, each strand seemingly alive and malevolent. Kamithi Kai's violet eyes burned as she ordered the stormtroopers to board the battle platform, gathering her inner power. Her onyx-scaled armor clung to her muscular, well-formed body. Her demeanor spoke of power and confidence and yearning for destruction. Zeke tended his own duties. He himself had been a target of Kamithi Kai's suspicious thoughts. The Night Sister didn't trust him. She felt his commitment to the dark side wasn't strong enough, and that he was blinded by his former friendship with the Jedi twins, Jason and Jaina Solo. Zeke had been trained as a prize student of Lord Brackus, and had defeated the Night Sister's own protege, Villas, in a duel to the death. By winning the duel, Zeke had gained the title of Darkest Knight. And Kamithi Kai, perhaps because she was simply a sore loser, or perhaps because she sensed his flickering doubts, rarely let him out of her sight. But Brackus had given him command of the Shadow Academy's new force wielders, who would be on the vanguard of battle to reclaim the galaxy. He himself would lead the dark side strike force, dropping like death from the skies to obliterate Master Skywalker's trainees. Zeke drew a deep breath, smelled the metallic tang in the cold air. He heard coolant pumping, engines powering up, and a clatter of stormtrooper armor, preparatory signals as systems were locked down. They were ready to launch. Zeke turned to his group of force-talented warriors. He wore his crimson black-lined cape and his leather armor. His lightsaber hung clipped at his side, waiting to be used. He had secured his long dark hair in a neat ponytail, and his emerald green eyes flashed at those who gathered around him. Feel the force move through you, he said to the other trainees. They stood with their jaws set, their eyes alert, eager for battle. They had been trained for this. He gestured to the waiting platform, and the dark Jedi moved with a fluid motion as they entered the armored vessel. We must strike the Jedi Academy now, before we lose our element of surprise. The TIE pilot's helmet fit perfectly in his gray-haired head. Along with the breathing mask, goggles, black flight suit, padded gloves, and heavy boots, the uniform seemed to transport Coral back to a much different time, a time when he had been much younger, a pilot for the First Empire. Years ago, he had flown in the wing of TIE fighters from the original Death Star to attack the desperate fleet of Rebel X-Wings. He had been shot down in combat, spiraling down to crash land on the wilds of Yavin 4. When he looked behind him, to his absolute horror and disbelief, Coral had watched the invincible Death Star blow up, leaving him stranded on the miserable little moon. After recovering from his injuries, Coral lived like a hermit for over 23 years, until 4 young Jedi trainees had stumbled upon him, setting in motion the events that had returned him to the Second Imperium. And now, Coral found himself boarding another TIE fighter, launching from another battle station, once more ready to defeat the rebels. This time, though, he was sure it would end differently. This time, the Empire would make no mistakes. Coral stood in front of his wing of 12 TIE fighters. Crowded into the side of the launching bay, the small fighters would take off as soon as the battle platform descended. He turned to his troops, all of them proven unproven fighters, taken from ranks of the most ambitious new stormtrooper trainees. The new pilots had never seen combat. They had only practiced performing simulation after simulation. But he knew they were itching for a real fight. The pilots stood beside their ships, clothed in identical black flight suits and helmets. One new pilot fidgeted with obvious eagerness, glancing toward his TIE fighter, studying the laser turrets, anxious to be off. He finally stepped forward. The fighter removed his helmet and held it against his chest. Even before seeing the young man's face, Quirrell knew it was the broad-shouldered Norris, former leader of the Lost Ones. "Excuse me, sir, I have a suggestion," Norris said. "In light of my superior performance during simulations, since I scored better than these others, I think I should be the one to lead this wing." Quirrell quelled his anger. "I understand your reasons, Norris. You've done excellent work in your cross-training as a TIE pilot and stormtrooper. You're eager to learn, presumably to serve the Second Imperium, but I must turn down your request this time." "On what basis?" Sensing the challenge in the young man's voice, Quirrell kept his answer firm and direct. "On the basis that Brackus chose me to command this mission. If you prefer not to follow orders, however—" He shrugged, leaving the implication hanging in the air between them. The boy was so rude and often insubordinate that if he hadn't shown such true aptitude for weaponry and fighting skills, Quirrell would have certainly left him behind. Too much was at stake for this mission to allow an overeager young man to botch things up. Norris flushed. "I think you're afraid, old Quirrell. You're old and haven't flown a mission in years. You're leading the wing so you can hold us back to cover your own failures." "That will be all," Quirrell said in a voice, although quiet, was so commanding the air cracked with tension. "I give you the choice. Say the word and I'll ground you from this mission. I'll hold your tongue and fight for your emperor." At that moment, Quirrell didn't care what the surly young man chose. He would gladly take a smaller fighter wing. It was the only way to ensure his pilots were well disciplined. Fuming, Norris struggled to keep silent and rammed the black helmet back into his head. Quirrell spoke, more to divert attention from the outburst than for any other reason. "We've successfully jammed all signals from the Jedi Academy. They were unable to call for reinforcements, so no battleships are in orbit. The foolish Jedi Knights must have assumed that their own powers and their puny energy shield would be enough to thwart us. According to our monitoring systems, our first Imperial Commando raid has already been succeeded in removing their shields. The Jedi Academy lies open and vulnerable to our attack. When Timothy Kai launches her battle platform to guide the military strike, Lord Zeke will take his dark Jedi trainees and combat the Jedi Knights directly. Our wing will fly harassment strikes from the air. Although we are meant to cause considerable damage, our mission is to support, not to serve as the front line of attack. Is that understood?" The pilots murmured their understanding. Quirrell couldn't tell if Norris' ship had joined them. "Very well. To your ships," he said. His pilots scrambled to their cockpits, and Quirrell settled behind the pilot's controls of the lead TIE fighter. He drew a deep breath through the filtering mask, smelling the delicious and familiar chemical taint of the air from his tanks. He smiled. It felt so good to be able to fly once again. From the helm of the tactical battle platform, Timothy Kai shouted, "Let us be off. We shall return victorious before this day is done." The great hangar bays opened, revealing the blackness of space shared with the emerald moon, behind which loomed the boiling orange cauldron of the gas giant Yavin. The moon looked insignificant against the panorama of the universe, but it was the Shadow Academy's target, destined to become the site of a furious battle and an Imperial victory. Timothy Kai commanded the battle platform to rise up on its repulsorless and head out to the Shadow Academy. The military vessel appeared to be a large, flattened sail barge with rounded corners, 2 levels high, with an upper command deck that would open to the air once they reached the atmosphere. Armed stormtroopers and the ground assault forces filled the first level, while Zeke and his dark Jedi took their positions at the bottom bay near the drop doors. The battle platform descended through space toward the tiny fingernail of atmosphere around the green moon. As the minutes passed, Zeke paced back and forth. He looked out the viewport and saw the ring station high overhead, dwindling as the battle platform increased speed toward Yavin 4. "Packs ready?" he asked, adjusting the equipment strapped around his chest and back. His black cape hung over it, his inner scarlet lining flashing as he moved. His squad of dark Jedi checked their weapons. Scores of identical lightsabers manufactured aboard the Shadow Academy. The team members adjusted their repulsor packs on their shoulders. One by one, they declared their readiness. The blackness of space was streaked with white haze as the battle platform plunged headfirst into the atmosphere. Zeke felt a buffeting vibration as winds clawed the armored plates. The hull heated up, and Zeke could see the ionized scream of the shockwave through the air. But Timothy Kai piloted the platform expertly, without hesitation, directly toward their target. The Night Sister's deep, hard voice came over the comm. We're approaching the target altitude. Zeke, prepare your dark Jedi for departure. The airdrop doors will open in 1 standard minute. Zeke clapped the gloved hands, ordered the dark Jedi to stand in range. The repulsor packs will carry you, he said, but use your force abilities to guide your descent. We must strike directly. These are our sworn enemies, Luke Skywalker's Jedi Knights. The future of the galaxy hinges on our victory today. Zeke fixed his penetrating gaze on each one of the trainees, trying to impart a fraction of his determination to them. They were valiant warriors, vowing to succeed in their quest. But Zeke had not yet dealt with his own inner turmoil. He knew in his heart that Timothy Kai's doubts about his loyalty had a legitimate foundation. He did feel a longing friendship toward his dear friend Jaina Solo and her brother Jason. Deep in the forest of Kashyyyk, he had warned Jaina to stay away from the Jedi Academy. He did not want her to be a part of this battle today. He did not want her to become a victim. But he knew with equal certainty that the Jaina Solo he knew and cared for would never stay away to save herself and leave her friends to die. He dreaded the thought that she might be down there, ready to fight against him. Zeke was grateful to have his thoughts interrupted as the door thumped and the drop bay doors creaked open. A line of brighter air that, like a thin, toothless smile, appeared at their feet and then yawned wide. The jungle treetops were visible below, punctuated by the protruding stone towers of ancient Massassi temples. All right, my dark Jedi, Zeke shouted at the howling wind. The hour is ours! Depart! Leading the charge, he dove into the sky, switched on his repulsor pack, and tumbled toward the unprotected Jedi Academy. Behind him, the other dark Jedi dropped from the battle platform one by one, falling like deadly birds of prey. In flight, Zeke ignited his lightsaber, holding it out like a glowing beacon. He glanced up to see the other assault troops similarly extending their blazing weapons, capes fluttering behind them. Dark Jedi rained down from the sky.